Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me and see me. Maybe someone can just write a short message whether this is working. Perfect. Thank you, Silvana. So we will start on time, although some people may be joining in at a later stage. I want to welcome all of you. Thank you for joining this webinar. We're currently in the German afternoon time zone, but I know for some of you it's early in the morning or in the evening. So thank you for your time and for joining in this meeting today. My name is Alexandra. I am working for Fase, which I will explain in just a couple of minutes, and I will be guiding you through the seminar. As you may have seen, there is a chat function available, so that is a good option to write in some questions. Organizational-wise, we will have about 30 to 40 minutes of the seminar presentation, and then I will be happy to answer some of your questions in the remaining 20 minutes. So in case you have any questions, please either share them directly or put them up in the end of the seminar. As you might have seen already on the website, this is not the only webinar that is taking place, but it is actually a webinar series that we're conducting. And today we will start with the first session, focusing on why it is interesting and maybe a good step for you to consider going to a self-sustaining business model, followed by 3 further seminars that are focusing on the way of growing your business and the idea of testing the market, getting the business plan ready, and the final webinar on the question of how to approach investors. The dates are already set up on the webpage of the Empowering People Network, so you can also already plan ahead and hope you like it so you can join in the other ones. So let me give you a short overview of what we're planning to do today. I will just briefly start with a short introduction to the Powering People Network for those who are not as aware of it, Fase, the organization I am working for, and just a short glimpse in the world of social entrepreneurship and what we mean by it. We will then dive directly into the main topic of today, the assessment and requirements when transforming into a social business and what that might mean for you, and we'll sum up with some key learnings and outlook. So the Empowering People Network. Most of you will probably know it because that's the way you came here, but for those of you who are not as aware of it, let me just say a couple of words to the Empowering People Network and what it's about. So what it basically does, to have it very short and simple, is to bring together startups, social entrepreneurs, organizations that are developing ideas and working on technical solutions and help them in providing knowledge and providing network opportunities and in giving them help and support on their way of being entrepreneurs. This seminar is a good part of it because it tries to give information that might be relevant to you in your process, to you as the Empowering People Network participants and everyone out there who comes across this and will also most obviously get something out of it. So we can thank the Empowering People Network at this stage for giving such great input and efforts in these topics. For the reason of this webinar and actually the whole series that we're offering, they have started a cooperation with Fase. Fase is standing for Financing Agency for Social Entrepreneurship, and we're a small organization sitting here in Munich. Fase is a subsidiary company of Ashoka, which some of you might know as being the biggest network of social entrepreneurs, which was founded in 1960 already and is available across the world already now spreading with its offices. What Ashoka is looking for and also what Fase's intend to is to identify those people that are able to change the system. So that means that for most entrepreneurial efforts, there needs to be someone who's starting with that glimpse and that spirit. And that can happen anywhere and in any any way of this business or of different social aspects, and that is the one that Ashoka is looking for. What Fase now is doing exactly is to help young entrepreneurs or older entrepreneurs, but young companies to get through this first step of when they are already founded and when they're grounded as a company to find money to grow further. So this first very financing aspect that you're looking for, we try to connect the entrepreneurs with investors who are especially interested in this kind of growth capital, and bring them together. So we make these two worlds meet and help them facilitate on the process, and thereby basically build bridges between the investor and the social entrepreneur side. So when I talk about social entrepreneurs and impact investing, what is that I'm actually meaning? And I know there's a broad difference of perception, so let me just give you a short idea of where I'm heading here. This slide is basically about three points I want to make. The first is the term social business. Social business for us has basically two dimensions, and this is on the one hand the social idea, and on the other hand the business model. The social idea can range from anywhere between being a little bit innovative but more or less an already established solution, to some innovative incremental, so a little bit new but also some old things, to an innovative radical disruption, so something that you've really never seen before, not in this context and not as a solution as such. On the other dimension, there's the question of the business model, which can range from the one extreme to be funded by donations only, which is true for most of the social organizations that go out and look for donations money, that don't have any business model that gives them any revenues from sales or these things that basically force them to receive donations, to something in between, so partly donations and partly own revenue, and the other extreme, the fully self-sustaining by earned income model. So basically operating as a company, as a business enterprise, and earning money, which they can then again spend. These are basically the extremes that are in the market for what we are focusing, or where I'm heading at today. It's on the business model part of partly donations and revenues to the direction of a really self-sustaining model, because that's what we believe is the most long-term beneficial part of the business model. Then the second and the third part of this chart I want to bring your attention to is the definition of the social entrepreneur, which you might have come across already. And I just like this citation by Ashoka, and especially the part of the most pressing social issues that I was mentioning before, that are being usually looked at and worked at from you guys and the ones out there who consider themselves social entrepreneurs, driven by this vision and the high aspect of this self-motivation and idea behind it. And the third one, the impact investments, which is then basically the other side. So the one who is giving you money to grow your business. And these impact investments, that's the term, what the term is about, is mostly a combination really of funds that is focusing on a financial return, but also a very big and important part that is concerning the whole impact side. So it's not only about financials, it's about giving something good and also expecting a social return. I will say a couple of words at the end to that impact part. Now, I hope this is making sense so far. So let us go directly in the assessment and requirements when transforming into a social business, and what I mean by that. Well, let us start with just having you or someone you know, or this person here as an example, to say, I imagine where I want to go and where I stand. I currently have maybe a good idea, maybe I even have a working product. I might even have some customers. I've managed to get some financing in the past weeks or months or even years, and I have plans, but I have mostly short-term plans. So I'm good at where I stand, but now I kind of want to go further, and I'm thinking, how do I do this and where do I want to go? So where do I want to go is really a question of where most entrepreneurs stand at one point, and the question is, how will I grow my idea? I know this picture is kind of black and white, and there's probably always something in between, but in the end, it's really a question of how serious and how professional you want to work. And I'm not saying that organizations that are only looking at this donation-based side are not working professionally, not at all. But for being a long-term and stable organization, you would probably agree that some things are much easier if you don't have to think about getting money in on such a regular basis that it's just taking a lot of time from you. So let me start with just a couple of arguments, so to say, or maybe some good reasons why it might be helpful or might make sense to get more professional and to build a self-sustaining business model. The first argument I would say is that you can grow your idea much bigger and also reach more people. The term here that is often being used in the context is the term of scalability. So scalability really means that you can put something in and you can get even more out of it, and you don't have to put as much in to get much more out, but at one point it's easier to get more out, and that really only works when you have an idea and a concept and a business model that makes it able for you to grow these scales and to participate actually in a much broader scale from what you're doing. The second step is, or the second reason is that you can build a long-term and a sustainable company, meaning that if you are relying on donation-based money, it's usually a question of time that you realize that it's getting even harder to get more money to grow any bigger, and that you can only think in some parts really for a long term because you can't make any promises when you don't know that the money is coming in. So you're always dependent on your donors, and this is very stressful for you if you're thinking about, okay, what am I doing in 5 years, because it's just too far away to plan sometimes. And that always very closely linked to the third point of having to spend a lot of money, a lot of time to get a lot of money in. And if you want to get more money in, it's a lot of more time you have to spend in collecting it. And this time you spend on looking for money is often time that you, as a driven entrepreneur or social ambitionist, want to spend in your idea and what you bring to the people or the project you're working on. So that is for most of the people a very stressful part in having such a long time and such a big part of your business to collect the money. The fourth reason I've put it out here is that you can get even better people to work with you when you're able to pay them. We all know that people are not only motivated by money, but at some point it's always helpful if you can pay them at all, and even pay them a little bit more than they might be expecting, because that's where you see that you get at some point good people that really drive your business on further, and that can make it grow in a much more a bigger sense than what you expected. And just to get it to a short example here, you might know from your studies at the Empowering People Network the example of the $1 glasses company. It was founded in 2012, and to just give you a short idea of how this company could look like that I'm talking about, and what we're actually what kind of companies that could actually be that what I'm just saying here. And $1 glasses has really managed to get an idea of where they want to go. they managed to see, okay, we have a social problem. That's the problem that a lot of people around the world are needing glasses, and they can't be provided. So what do? We can either start to raise money and work from donations, or we can try to find a way to get this in a more sustainable way. And they found a way to make a business out of it, and it works in that sense that they have the facilitation so really at the place where it's needed. So they're working in the countries. They're not sending it over and shipping it from Germany or somewhere. They're really in the countries, and they're making the people who are living there work for the countries. So they integrate the people that are locally living there to work in the business, and then actually get a chance by that to build up a whole working process. And they still get some donations. So when you consider the slide I was talking about earlier, they're not on a fully sustainable basis. So they have partly sustainable business and partly donation business. But you can see from the numbers and their operating business in 6 African countries, in Bangladesh and Nicaragua, that they've managed to get beyond this point of being just a small local provider for some people, but instead being openly available for a lot of people, and for much more than they could have been if they just decided to be a small local service function or a social idea for some people. So this idea of growing, as you can see, is a major point, and I want to stress this out with diving into the financial side of this whole social business aspect. And this is just to set the frame between the non-repayable and the repayable financing. You will most likely know the difference between what it means to have to pay back money and what not. And I will not go too much into depth with the non-repayable financing. But there will be an article being published soon on the website, which goes through these different parts of financing in much more detail, and you can read through it if you want to. But for today, I will only focus on the repayable financing, because this is what you actually going to be working with if you decide to become more self-sustainable, look for a business model that is functioning, and then at the end look for investors who are paying you or who provide you money. So I've differentiated between loans and investments. I will go into a little more depth, as I promised, and differentiate in the next step between the direct investments, loans, and mezzanine capital. Here in the chat, there's already the referring to the blog, and there also will be an even more detailed article coming up soon that will be also posted. It's not online yet, I think, but it will be soon. So the repayable financing. We differentiate between direct investments, loans, and mezzanine capital. Direct investments are a very common way to invest in entrepreneurs. Let us firstly start with the normal setup and then dive into the social entrepreneurs as a special kind of entrepreneurs or startups. So the idea of direct investments is that people say, okay, I want to participate in your company. I will provide you money, but I want to have something for it, of course. And for direct investments, this means that people who provide you money get in return some shares of your company. So the idea is that they will be partly owners of your company, so to say. And by that, they will have the rights to participate in some of your decisions, depending on where you agree, where the borderlines are. And they benefit of the earnings and of everything that you will do, basically. The good part is that they have a high motivation to help you, because they're participating from your profits and whatever they give into you. And that's often money, but often it's also advice on ideas, it's network, it's a lot of good thoughts they can give you. And they're doing that because they know, okay, the better your company grows, the more they will get out of it. So it's a little maybe, also thought on the on their side, but it's helping you as well. The problem that concerns social entrepreneurs is that usually this whole system is built on an exit. So that means they will only get money out of the company when the company is sold. If you consider the cases of who do we have, WhatsApp and these kind of companies that were sold and where people earned a lot of money, that was great, but that was also great because the people were willing to sell their idea and willing to give the company away. For most social entrepreneurs, that doesn't work that good because they do it because they believe in their idea and they want to hold it and they don't want to sell their idea to just some other party. So that's not always as easy, although there's something in between, but we will come to that. Regarding the loans, that's the part that you might have come across already with. It's usually a credit given by a bank, can be an individual person, can be someone who is willing to give you money, but again, wants something in return for it. The but here is not that they're getting a part of your company usually, but they're getting some, usually something back, which you need to provide them. So that can be either a participation of, let's say, 5%, 10% that you have to give them on a regular basis, either a month or quarterly or whatever you agree to, or it can be done in terms of securities that they want to have the agreement that you give them, ranging from the place that you're working as, if it's not a rented place, that if something goes wrong with the company, that they have something they can take from you. And this something can be quite burdensome if you don't have anything that you can give them. So that's always a little tricky if you're a young company, because banks want something in return for when they give you money, and you will notice that this something that you have to offer is often not enough for them. So also quite tricky, but also works, and it always depends on who you meet and on what chances you have to get money and get it fairly cheap when you're good. And the third option that is often in the context of the social entrepreneurs, quite young, but also quite well taken up very well by both sides, is the idea of mezzanine capital. And the idea of mezzanine capital is basically that it is something between the direct investment and loans. So that means that on the one hand, it works as an equity or direct investment. That means people who provide you the capital do get some participation rights. So you agree, for example, that if you change the context of if you change the product that you're working on, or if you change the the group that you're selling it to. So if you have focused on a certain social group and you're now deciding that you're not doing it social anymore, but doing something else, then that would be a decision that a mezzanine provider would have agreed to. Mostly that's things that are honestly fairly, very fair to be taken, because if you change completely the way that you're heading to, I think it's okay that people that provide you money can say, well, let us discuss this. But it's again ranging depending on the negotiations. On the other hand, it's they get some, so they provide you the money and they get during a certain duration, so usually can be between 3 to 5 years, they are provided with the amount of money that they put in at the end, and usually some kind of regular payment during the term. So that's also up to negotiation, but it gives you a little bit more time and flexibility not to be needed to pay back the money or as much money as you would pay with a loan. So usually the repayments are much smaller for the mezzanine capital, and then you have to provide the money at the end. But then if you have given it back at the end of the 3-5 year terms, then the investor is out and you have kept your shares and you're still owning the company by yourself. but you had the chance to grow this company during the terms that you're provided the money with. So it's a little difficult to explain, but I hope it's clear that the options are always, and that the bad news somehow related with something you have to give up, and there's always a but, and there's something that people want if they give you money. But on the other hand, the good news is that there are quite some options available, and that even for social entrepreneurs, things like this mezzanine capital and also direct investment and loans, if you consider them good and if you negotiate hard with your capital provider, can work very well for you. And there are numerous examples of companies who have done so. Now let me get a little more into how this can actually work for social entrepreneurs. The term hybrid finance is the one that usually comes up at this point, and you might have come across it. And what it basically means is that you will see, or you may have experienced already, that as a social entrepreneur, you're somehow sitting in between the chairs, and it's something that's sometimes helpful and sometimes difficult. Difficult, especially when you're looking for growth capital and need to convince somebody of helping you and providing you money. So what hybrid finance means is that you are combining opportunities of getting money to then get what you want to grow. So it says that you don't need to decide between, am I collecting the money from a donation sector, or am I raising money from mezzanine capital or loan capital providers, but I'm combining it and mixing it, and thereby taking the best out of both worlds, basically. That can be done by different setups. So you can either say, I am a startup or a company who has or will have a break even. That's the first part, where you will where your revenue and your cost curve eventually meet up, and you only need this first basically hole to be filled with some extra capital, which can be done by donations capital in the beginning, but you will eventually reach the point where you won't be needing donations anymore and will be able to just work from your own revenues that you're getting in. The second part is that there might be a business model that you have that will never be profitable with all the activities and won't come to a break even. So you will necessarily always have a hole between the revenues and the cost that you're earning. So what you can do here, and what the hybrid finance model basically suggests, is that you look for a way to fill this hole by either having having a solution that works in the way that you have a good business idea that might be able to be sold to a certain group, and by selling it to a certain group, you earn money and you get into a zone where you can earn capital and get revenues out of it. And with this revenues, you can basically substitute the product that you're selling to underprivileged or not being able to sell it, but have to give it away for free in order to help them. So you basically build two companies, and the one company is the one that is working productively and earning money, and with that you support the other one, because the other one will only be able to help underprivileged or help the ones that are not being able to pay anything for your service. So that's a way to have basically two small companies performing under one, where the one is helping the other. And another way to work in this not break-even reaching way of business is that you have someone else, to be a little bit fuzzy here, someone else pay for the external effects that you're reaching. That's what's usually understood in the term pay for success mechanism or social impact bond. So what it says is that you can basically have some output. So a good example is a company that is working with children who have been criminals in their youth and then usually grow up in a certain very high percentage, often falls back into criminal areas, and it's usually for the state that they're living in a high cost burden because they need to be come back in rehabilitation programs, and it takes a lot of time, and the state is losing a lot of money on these people. So there's one social impact bond focusing on that, and of course they help basically the youth that have been criminals in their early years, and put them into programs and help them integrate and get them on a good track. And they're doing that, but of course they can't earn any money with it because they're not letting them pay for it, they're helping them. But what this organization did, and that's a good example of how you can still get along, is that they managed to get the local, in this example, the local the district, like the district government, to say, okay, we're calculating you that this is the amount of money that you actually save because we're helping these youths to integrate so much earlier that they don't fall back into criminalism. And actually, this amount of money is what you save, and we expect that you pay us something back from this amount of money that we save this local government. And they're doing it on a trial now, but there are, I think, more than 20 social bonds in the trial right now. And it's exactly this example of having someone who benefits from your activities, being at a local government or a certain district or an area, to have them pay for what you're doing. And often this can be calculated very good because you can see how many people fall back and how much it takes per person to actually get them into rehabilitation. And so this is an option of where social impact bonds, a very nice concept, is working for social entrepreneurs that necessarily have a group that will not be able to generate them any revenues at all. And that brings us to this point where what I was talking about earlier, the challenge of social enterprises that don't fit into traditional types. So again, the extremes of the nonprofit and the profit side is the nonprofit part, that positive aspect that you don't need to return the capital. And on the other hand, the negative part, that's the restricted funding, the high unreliability because you don't know when what is coming in, and also the dependency of one financer or few financiers, which you have very often, and would kind of inhibit you on growing further. On the other hand, the for-profit side is also has some negative aspects on the repayment parts, and that you have to give back the money, that it's not just coming for free, and that there's always been a but, and also that it's mostly legally binding, so there's a lot of restrictions that you have to follow. But on the positive part, again, that it's very long-term thoughts that you can grow and very strategic ideas that you can put on a big scale, and unrestricted options that are available. For those who are feeling that both worlds aren't really the ones that they're working on, the hybrid parts, as I was saying, is to consider yourself not as the one or the other, but really to benefit from both worlds and say, okay, wherever I can, I will approach these people that will be able to give me donation money, and I will have some organizational forum where I can take in this donation money, because a normal company can take in donations. You have to be a social registered organization. But to have this kind of company available to work with and to operate, and to at the same time have maybe a company sitting next to it, and that works in most organizations. It works very well to have both being founded and put under one roof, basically have one professional organization working with investors, with generating business, with generating revenues, and having that support the other one in order to have like one big idea. Okay, and then what this should ultimately lead to is the so-called doubled bottom line that the social investment and the social investor will meet at. So the idea is that for the social investor who invests in these kind of companies, it is, of course, always for investors about money and about getting money out of it. So we will provide you with money, and something will be coming back in return. But for the social investor, it's not only about getting money out of it. And that's what I said in the beginning, because if it was only about money, trust me, there are much easier ideas of getting money back in investments. So social investors are usually very aware that this is a very high risk investment, and that it's really about the motivation of the social issue behind. So when you meet a social investor, most of them will actually care for what you're doing. They will care for your idea and where you're heading to, and they will be fine and want to be sure that there is also a return for society that they're generating. So the more you are able to put down for an investor, not only the figure that they're getting back financially, but also the amount of people that you can help per year, the amount of people you reach, the number of products that you're selling, all these kind of things that actually refer to the impact side and the side of what your social ambition is. The more you will be able to give this view to the investor, the happier he will most likely be, because that's in his head the second part of the deal. It's the first part is the financial side, and the second part is the societal or impact part. So always have in mind that if you talk to the impact investors, it's not just about the money, it's about these two things, and both of them should be equally or almost equally important to you and also to them. Now that was mainly the big part, and I hope it was mostly clear for you. I'm sorry that some of the concepts are difficult to explain, but I hope they came over well. And just to sum it up, on 2 slides, I want to just have a very not theoretical but very practical view on what that actually means when you're a company that decides to go on a professional and long-term sustainable way. So you actually will be operating a for-profit and not non-for-profit. And that might be something, or you will be surprised that some people actually consider this to be difficult personally as a concept, because many people start with the idea of being social, and the idea of having a for-profit company sounds kind of contradictory. But in the end, my experience and what we see in the market is that it's not contradictory at all, but it actually means that you are able to go beyond what it means to be social, because it says that you are working professionally and for profit just to use this profit that you make to invest it into even bigger social ideas. So don't let anyone disturb you with the idea that being social means that there is no money in the game. It's just a question of how you use the money and how you really perceive yourself as an entrepreneur and as a social entrepreneur to move on something. The second, your product service will serve a social or ecological purpose. Yes, that is definitely one of the major parts, because otherwise you could be doing anything, and anything wouldn't really necessarily have to be social. So having that as a major cornerstone of your business and as on your reason to proceed is something very, very important. Number 3, you will develop a plan for the future, which will be interesting from 2 perspectives, impact-wise and economically. Yes, again, what I said about the impact investor will be equally true for you. So it's not something that is an either or, it's really a both, and you will probably sooner or later notice that the stronger you are in one of the aspects, the more it will bring you on the other part. Because if you're economically strong, you will be able to achieve much more and reach better impact, and vice versa. And number 4, for your funding, you will address donors as well as investors. Yes, that's also not an either or, but you can do both. And it is a very different species of people, but both of the worlds have very, very good reasons to approach to, and it's just a question of where they can be helpful for you and how you can approach them in a direct way. So make sure that this is a big, big world of money out there, and it's your job to find the right way of approaching the people where you need the money from. And number 5, you will need to explain the concept of social entrepreneurship to many, but you will also notice what massive potential it holds. That's an experience that I have made, that many of the people I've been working with have made, that social entrepreneurship is unfortunately not yet as common in understanding as we wish it were. It's something that people naturally need some time to get into because, as I said earlier, this social and this making money is sometimes in the head difficult to combine. Nevertheless, when I see what has been developing on that edge in the past years, it's tremendous, and I'm 100% sure that social entrepreneurship and the idea of social business will grow much further. So you're definitely on the right track if that's the track you're heading, and it's just a matter of time that we need to fill with some more explanations that people will come up to, and just be aware that you're probably on the front edge of this whole leading. So there will be some that don't know it yet. And coming to the last slide, I see there's some more questions. We will soon go over to it. Just the last slide for today. The checklist for starting your social enterprise, wherever you're standing on your way. You have maybe have made some steps already. You have probably asked these questions to yourself already, or some of them, and it's just a short overview of the aim and vision, the business model, and the team that are, I would say, the 3 most important aspects. And the aim and vision parts, just to sum it up, is the main questions are if you want to, or do I know where I want to go? Am I ready to do this? And do I truly believe in my idea? Sounds very basic, but it's really not. And the stronger you are on that point, and the better fundament you have, you will go through many times and difficult times much easier if you know where you stand and where you grounded. So don't underestimate this part and saying, yeah, I've done that and I know what I do. Be sure you have good answers to the questions that you have and that also other people ask you. Number 2, the business model. Is it safe and sound? Have I considered all relevant stakeholders, and do I have a strategic plan? That's something that needs some time. It's nothing that you just grab up and are ready to go. Give yourself the time, also give you the time to rewrite your business plans, your ideas. Don't make the writing a too complicated part of this whole thing. So make sure you put something down in writing every once in a while, but don't stick to it like it has been written once. So especially in the first years, you have to be able to change and to adapt and to invent yourself to new things, because otherwise your organization will maybe just fail to meet what you expect essentially need to solve or need to approach. And so make sure you have a good idea, but also enough tendency and some options available to adapt this plan. And last point, the team, which is not to underestimate at all. Make sure you have good people around you who are passionate about the topic and definitely willing to walk an extra mile. We've seen many entrepreneurs who are really brilliant minds and very good people, but no one can really do this by themselves, and you need good people around you. And the better they are, the more fun it will be for all of you to do this, and rather start earlier. Okay, now I see the questions are coming in, and I will stop. And thank you very much for your attention. I hope it brought some new insights. Okay, now let me see. Manfred. Okay, that was an answer already. Wesley Meyer, when you mentioned having hybrid model and making one side profitable with returns while the other side is focused on more, on more social issues, are there any legal issues to be aware of? A question asked by Wesley Meyer. Yes, there are legal issues to be aware of. It's very depending very much on the regulative side of each country. So I can't say this for all countries. I know it for Germany that it's quite strict, and I think that most countries have some regulations about it. So make sure you check them. But the idea is basically that you have one social company. So it can either be a social entity as an so in Germany, it's a G GmbH, so social operative company, but it can also very much be some kind of Verein or like really just a social organization. And the other part is really, in a sense, a very strict normal business in the sense of any normal stock company basically is. And what the tricky part is that you have to be very clear in your operations. So you can't really mix it up and operate the financials and such under one. They need to be very strictly set between the one and the other, and there needs to be usually a contract between the one and the other, which says, okay, the company that is earning the money pays the amount of $20,000, for example, per year to the social company, or gives it to them to work on the social aspects. And in return, the social company, for example, is providing server capacities or whatever else, so that there's a contract in between them, but each are functioning as own entities. And the financial regulations, etc., will look at it that they won't mix and mess up, because the social organization, of course, needs to have good arguments and good transparency about being social. But it works, and it works in many countries of the world. So it can be well done, but you need to be aware of the regulations and need to make sure that you don't mess anything up, because then the regulatory sides will be looking at you quite strictly. Essentially, a donor's money could be channeled to the for-profit side and returned to an investor, defeating the purpose of a donation. Yeah, that's very right. So again, a question by Wesley Meyer. That's totally right. That's why it needs to be very strictly separated, and that it needs to be good contract between the companies. But the management of the companies, for example, can be the same, and that's not necessarily a problem as long as they're well organized and know how to differentiate between the companies. But it works. Are there more examples available, like the $1 Glasses Association? Unfortunately, as I'm working mostly with German or European related companies, I don't have too many very international ones available, but I would, or maybe I can give some examples. Yeah, I will give you one, and there's also, if you go on the website of Fase, you can look it up. There are also, I think, 10 more, some case studies and some examples written of companies that we've been working with. One example I like, which, because I think it's taking up so many good ideas into just one company, is a previous doctor who's been working for a gynecologist. So he's been working as a female doctor basically, and noticed that the whole topic of breast cancer detection is not very well organized, and that women only get good treatment when they're 50 years and above. And many of the cancers really could be treated much better if they were detected earlier. So what he did is saying there are especially blind women who have a much better sense in their feelings, so they can detect any cancers in a so much earlier stage than normal people. And it's a shame that women are on the one hand dying because of cancer, and on the other hand, all the blind women, I think are 80% of them are not integrated into the job market because they're blind and they're disabled and there's nothing they can do. So what he did is build up a concept of basically an education program for this blind women, building them up to, or teaching them to be detectors of breast cancer, so to say. And they are now, they have in Germany a couple of around Germany like places where they're working at, and also now growing into Europe and also expanding probably to South America soon. And they're on the one hand integrating disabled people into the work market. They're on the other hand helping the women to detect their breast cancer earlier, and on the third part, actually helping the insurance companies to save money, because the earlier you detect the cancer, the cheaper it is to basically work against it, and the more money they save. So they actually make the insurance company pay for this whole treatment and thereby earn the money. So there's a benefit basically for everyone. And I like the concept a lot. And yeah, that's one of the examples, but honestly, there are millions out there, and it's all of them have their own very good story. Alexander, there are a lot of, if not hundreds of examples regarding social inclusive businesses. Yes. Okay, you can look this up. One more question. Thanks, I meant how to transform foundation-based organization to a social enterprise. Yeah, that is a tricky part, but I think it's often a very good evolution that you can see for many of the organizations. So many start with an idea of having a social aspect, and then it's really the point where you can see, okay, is there any way where I can find a way to generate money with it? And it can either be the target group or audience that I've been working with so far. So maybe I have given away a product or a service for free, where I can actually see, okay, it might be able not to get like huge money out of it, but I can make them pay something for it and actually transform it from just donation to at least some revenue. Then what a second idea sometimes, or what could work, is that you have a product or a service and you have provided it for a social group. And you see that with this competence that you have and that you have provided for this purpose for free, you can change it and alter it a little bit, and then actually use this idea or a part of it and sell it to another totally different target audience that actually pay for it. So a short example that I have here is that we've been working with a company, and they produced videos for students that drop out of school. And if they drop out of school, they don't have any, they haven't finished school and they don't have anything to work with. And it's a major problem in many countries. And they said, okay, if this whole learning part would be more interesting, then people would actually, students would look at it and would follow it, and would be less likely to drop out of school. So they did this whole video gamification learning content stuff and provided that to students who learned it and who you could follow that. Most of them would be much better in school and wouldn't drop out as such a high quote, but of course wouldn't be able to pay too much for it, because those students who aren't too good at school aren't or often many of them won't pay for the service or won't be able to pay for the service. So that wouldn't necessarily work as a model. And what this company did is to say, okay, actually we're very good at making videos, and having this content put into a video with a good gamification concept, with like something that is different. And so they provide now the service of putting content into videos to companies companies and also governments who are using it. So they're saying, for example, for the German some refugee part of the government organization, they're saying we need something that we can provide, but we can't do it. Can you do it for us? And they're having different customers who are actually paying them good money, and thereby substitute the business for the students who are getting the videos for free. So this is their concept of what they're good at and how they can use the same idea but provide it differently with someone who actually pays for it. Another question by Melody Sambuco. Does the transformation impact some legal or structural? E.g., you have to register the company because you are now making money and initially you were registered as a non-profit. Impact the transformation impact you? Yes, it depends. So if you have, if I understand the question correctly, is that you're saying you used to be a social company and now you're transforming to a profit organization. Then if you were registered at a social organization, you may have to change that status and register as a company. Yes, because it's always a question of whether you're just doing that for non-profit social, and then you usually have some tax exemptions, and you usually have a beneficiary status from tax and government-wise. And when you're registered as a business or even a social business, that depends on the legislation and the company and the countries. Then you have to register as this one, because otherwise, of course, there's a lot of possibilities to do some fraud and to misuse the money that you were donating or you got at donations. But it's a very technical stuff, and it's very different in the different countries. But that's something that you definitely have to go through and look out for in order not to make any mistakes that you might. Okay, any more questions? We have 2.5 more minutes, I think. And I think there are also some more examples from the VPN network that you can look up to. Manuel Kreitmeier, where do you see the greatest potential for social entrepreneurs within the next years, in terms of topics or in terms of countries or general? Fields of engagement, for example. I mean, I see a lot of technical app solutions coming up. That's more like a non-technical term now. It's definitely interesting, especially if you consider what I said in the beginning, the term of scalability, because with a good programmed app, as we all know, you can reach a lot of people. And if it's something that's as effective as some of the big apps that have been programmed in the past, and if it's something that actually helps to serve a social purpose, I think it's the impact can be tremendous. But it's also still on the edge where people are not sure whether this technical solution only, so just a platform provider, is really the right way to go. So be prepared for some discussions there if you have a platform. Because that's still, I would say, in the development. Regarding topics, as you said, like inclusion, development aid, and so on, I think Well, I don't know if there's really a worldwide trend towards or movement towards some topics. I would say in Europe, it's definitely topics such as inclusion in terms of various groups. So refugees is still a very big topic. Also, disabled people is something that we see a lot of movement coming up. Um, I think in other countries throughout the world, the topic of safety for women, and also still a lot of issues in how do you say healthcare, and basically getting unnecessary deaths, unnecessary times, or a waste of times where time lags are in between helping people because there was a lack of information. So anything that can be helped through by technical measures in order to improve health and safety is something that's, I think, a very growing aspect, because we're much better at this right now than we were a couple of years ago. But in any sense, because I had that question, some other point, I would always suggest to do whatever your topic is, whatever you came across and notice, okay, I want to be doing this because I see an urge to, because everyone who does something because someone else is needing it, but not because you're convinced by yourself that it's the right thing to do, will probably be not as successful. So I would always, I'm not saying that you're not doing this, but I would always suggest that you really look for this topic that forces you to do something because you see it and just can't take it, that it's not done in a better way. And that's the topic that gives you the drive to go through all this process and go through all these things, and the motivation to make it just better because it's just not good enough how you see it. And that's the topic that you will be great at, and where you will convince people to support you and provide you money and follow you on your way. So yeah, that's basically the final word, I would say. If you have any further questions, nice final words. Thank you. A good question for the end. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you will follow up on the further webinars that are coming up, and also the blog articles and the detailed articles that are being all provided on the EPN website. And thank you for participating, and I hope you have a good evening and night and day wherever you are. Thank you.